The format for right now is the beginning of the meeting is going to be a joint meeting between the two groups. It's going to be with the Congresswoman, who's running about 5 minutes late. We've just been informed. So that's going to kick off at around 7:45 to 7:50 for 30 minutes. There's a Q&A that Barbara Zahm and Luisa Benedetto prepared. So they're going to lead us in that discussion with the questions. And then if we have leftover time, we'll administer to answer a few more questions while we have, the Congresswoman's time. Then at 8:15, we're going to do a regular rising meeting, which will be a quick call to order. And then we have two guests. We have Fernando Tirado, who's on the line, and Stephanie Veras from the Riders Alliance, who's also on the line. Fernando's from the Department of Health. He's going to talk about setting up a community organization active in disasters. And Stephanie is going to speak to us about the Riders Alliance and all the good work they're doing to fight for additional funding within the MTA. And then after that, we're going to handle some new business with a few different things going on in the community real quick. And then we'll do old business, and then we'll do an open forum for hopefully about 10 or 15 minutes, in which case everyone will get 2 minutes to, just kind of address everybody who's on the call and talk about, what's, if they need something addressed, if there's some sort of problem in the neighborhood, if they just like to share something up, it's up to them. Everybody gets 2 minutes. We'll listen. I have the agenda, don't worry. We're going right off the sheet of music today. Let's see here. Cheryl, you're back.
Yeah, she looks good.
Yes, I knew the living room from anywhere. Yes, glad to see you back. Glad your trip went well.
Muted.
Yes.
Muted, Cheryl.
Oh, there she is.
Go get off the mute. So
Thank you.
There we go.
The Brinkler.
There's Ora and Michael.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a nice crowd today. And we'll probably get a few more through the Facebook feed, so we can bring them in as well. We have 9 people also watching through Facebook. I have it on. Keeping an eye on everything.
You said 7:45? I should get good dinner.
Yeah, she's going to come on at 7:45, but what we're going to do is, Barbara and Louisa will guide us in a little initial discussion. And then worst comes to worst, look, we have an agenda here. We can improv a little bit and do things that, we can move forward.
I should have got my plate and brought it up here to get my
You
brother.
still have time. You still have time.
You have time.
Yeah, you do have time.
You have a lot of
Do I
time.
put in my plate now?
Yeah, you can make it happen. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. If you need to, no worries.
I don't see it on City Island Indivisible.
I put it on there.
No,
Hold
but I
on.
don't see it live.
It should be. Hold on. Let me check.
Can you check?
I'm on it right now as we speak.
I'm gonna go get my water.
Sure. Yeah, I see it on. It's shared live video. You can't really see, but it is on the on that page.
It's on that page.
Here, I'm gonna try to tag you in it.
Okay, I believe you. I just can't find it.
No, I understand. All right, I just tagged you in it so you can see.
I think you tagged me on City Island. Yeah, but
No, it's shared through Rising on the Indivisible page. So we both get the same thing.
Well, I see it.
Yeah, it's on there.
City Island Indivisible.
Yep.
Go to City Island Indivisible. It's there.
Okay.
Anyone have any fun plans for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to Cheryl Brinker's and have coffee in her quarantine.
Carol's a good time. I don't blame you. That sounds like fun.
I missed the coffee time.
There we go.
Actually, you can do it. You can get your coffee and sit outside the window. And I'll sit inside the window. We've done that before.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Because I've been on a plane and in 2 airports, I don't want to take a chance on giving anything to anybody. It was a really safe trip, but I was still out and I hadn't been out for 3 months.
Mhm.
I will be protesting. I don't know if that's, probably.
Yeah?
Yep, Union Square to Saturday morning.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Early.
it's one of the Manhattan protests. The only one I have on my calendar right now is there's one in Co-op City next week. I have that.
I heard about that one, but I haven't been to the city yet.
Yeah.
Because I'm a teacher, so I've been Zooming every live long day. But, finally
Yeah,
I have time where I can,
Totally. Yeah, I gotta get down there. Myself included.
I thought you were saying you were going to protest this meeting.
We don't have any of that yet, but who knows? The night is young.
I want to ask, did anyone get a COVID-19 test since the Saturday's gathering? As was suggested that, like 3 days or more after.
I had it before.
Wow. I haven't had it, no.
Yeah.
I was right in the midst of it, and I haven't left City Island, to be quite honest, since. So that was back in March. So I haven't left City Island since I got it.
Well, I got tested 2 weeks ago at the request from Westchester County because I'm a first responder up there, and I was negative on both
Good.
strains.
Where was it?
Where was the testing done?
Yeah.
It was at Westchester County Center.
Did anyone just get tracing done?
I'm sure that it was part of the program, because it was, first responders only, police, fire, corrections, and other, similar situated Westchester County employees or volunteers. So I'm sure they had a program in place. But I don't know anybody in, my department that tested positive. Nobody did.
Great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ella. I live out here on City Island, and I know that PCPs are also now testing in their offices. So if you have a primary care physician, you can find out from him or her if they are doing testing in their office.
Now, is that Ella Roundtree?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's right, Wes.
Yes.
Little Wes.
I'm with Wes. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually got tested Monday, which I realized was a mistake. I should have waited a few more days, but I went to the drive-through at Bay Plaza. Very quick.
And you didn't reschedule that or anything?
Me? I didn't
Yeah.
reschedule. No, but
No, pre-schedule. You didn't like sign up before
You have to have an appointment.
Sunday, no, I must have done it when I got back from the protest Saturday. I submitted the form, and then I got a call on Sunday to set up the appointment.
Great.
And they were pretty open because they were like anytime between 9 a.m. and I think 2 p.m. they said. So yeah, it was pretty easy.
And what is it, the nasal swab?
Yep.
Nasal swab.
I got the nasal swab also. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, you know. Listening to other people talking about it, I was really nervous and scared of going in there and having it done. But, you know, so just a tinge, and when you start feeling something, it's over. So it's not bad. I mean, both of my tests came back negative, and I don't know whether to jump for joy and not be happy about it, because at least if I had the antibodies, I could say, well, I've had it and hopefully I won't catch it again. But now you just never know.
Exactly.
What is how many days post potential exposure is the recommendation?
I think they said it takes about 2 weeks. Am I correct? 2 weeks for you to start having any symptoms?
No,
if you've
like
been exposed?
how soon? Like after the protest? I mean, I was very carefully keeping 6 feet distance, so I'm not gonna do it. But I'm just wondering after.
You could start showing symptoms. My understanding is after 5 days.
No, how soon after possible exposure can you have an accurate test?
Can I chime in here on that? Westchester, the guidelines that the state sent to, our fire department was that, after potential exposure, approximately 7 days, so 5 to 7 days before, you're likely to test positive if you were exposed. So minimum of 5 days.
So like give it a week before even getting a test.
5 to 7 days.
Yeah, because the closer you go after a potential exposure to that day, the lower the chance of false positive, or higher chance of false positive.
Or false positive
or false negatives. Yes, exactly.
I heard more than 3 days. I'm trying to remember where I think I saw that on a news source.
Well, I mean, if anybody's interested, I can get the documents that was sent by the New York Department of State to fire department for guidelines, and
Yeah, John, send it over, and we'll.
Yeah, I don't have it on. I don't have it on this computer. I have it on a fire department computer, but I'll send it to you for posting.
Yeah, no problem.
On Rising, if you like.
Cool.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Are we ready to rock, everybody?
Before you get started, John, I
Yes.
just wanted to do a shout out to Ron Turner. Every picture he takes is just phenomenal, and what he did on Saturday was great. And I saw him on the street today, and
Yes.
I said to him, Ron, once again, you captured the moment, and you have an eye. And he was very, very touched by it.
Yes.
Anybody who gets a chance should take a second to stop by, give him a thumbs up, give him a thank you, because without his work, I don't think we would have such a great idea of what this island is.
You're 100% right.
Totally unsolicited, just had to get it out there.
No, that's totally fine. So I'm just to keep things orderly for this meeting, I'm gonna just quickly put on mute all, and then what we're gonna do is Louisa and Barbara lead us in this. And from there, people have a question, they can just use the hand raise function, and we will call on you after they get through with the questions and what they want to say. So we're gonna mute everybody, mute all. So, yes.
My audio, okay, good.
Yeah, unmute.
All right, I'm good, I think.
You're good, okay.
And
then
Louisa,
I'm just getting Louisa on the unmute too. Hold on. This is all trial by fire here, my friends.
So is she going to be 5 minutes late from her 7:45? Is that what you?
We just got an update that she's actually picked up the time, so we should be okay.
Okay, because I think our introductions are very short.
Okay.
And I mean, we could do them, but then we can, we'll still be sitting around waiting unless there's more conversation. So.
Yeah. Well, what we can do is we could introduce who's a part of each board who's on the call, so that way people kind of put names to faces.
Oh, okay. Do you want to do that?
Sure, but I'm going to let you and Louisa take this over, and I'm going to mute myself.
All right. I think I'll start. Okay, Louisa? Are you
Sounds
good?
good.
Okay, great. So I'm Barbara Zahm, and I'm from City Island Indivisible. And I think the first thing well, actually, this is terrific. I'm so excited that we're doing this. And how many people do we have right now? 53. I'm sure it's going to grow. A lot of people have asked me why this event is being co-sponsored by both Indivisible and Rising. And I just wanted to sort of bring that up and explain that as we get started. The reason is that both groups had requested hosting AOC at a City Island forum. And since both groups had requested it, her time is very limited right now. And her team had suggested that we co-host the event. So we agreed. However, although both groups have many crossover concerns, and there are many of us who participate in both organizations, there are differences. City Island Rising is a 501c3 and is prohibited by the IRS from participating in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elective public office. Indivisible, on the other hand, is a nationwide movement of thousands of volunteer-led local groups that engage in progressive advocacy and specifically electoral work at the local, state, and national level. Consequently, due to the prohibition placed on Rising as a 501c3, certain questions that some of the individual members had relating to the upcoming local primary and national elections could not be asked at this co-sponsored event. We hope to have an additional event that will be sponsored only by City Island later after the primary. So we're going to work on that where we won't have these restrictions.
Yeah. Thank you, Barbara. And I just want to thank you and the City Island Indivisible for co-sponsoring the event with us. Hi, everyone. My name is Luisa Benedetto, and I'm a board member of City Island Rising. So City Island Rising, we're a young organization. We're especially young when compared to other groups in the East Bronx. However, I think, and I feel like many people in this meeting would agree that in the short amount of time that we've been an organization, we have been able to provide a platform for our members to amplify their voice and to also achieve some tangible results that continue to improve the quality of life on City Island. So I just again want to thank you, Barbara, for coordinating everything tonight. And I also want to give a shout out to Beverly, who's also on the City Island Rising board, for helping us put this together. And of course, again, to the City Island Indivisible for co-sponsoring.
Those are our introductions.
I'm unmuting myself. So I'm looking on the call from our group, and I want to thank Louisa, and she's going to read out the questions that we have pre-selected from, I think there were about a dozen that came in through the different channels. So we want to thank everybody for doing that. On our board here, obviously we have Louisa Benedetto, we have David Diaz, we have Stephanie Fisher. I'm looking around, we have Beverly Jones, we have Lois Wah, who's our advisor. And then we have, hold on, I'm scrolling through this right now. We have Kerry Filigara, who's on the line. And we have Dan Triber, who's also on the line as well. And so we are just thankful to everyone who is participating right now. I know that unfortunately it's been a while since we've all been at Clipper Coffee together and enjoying each other's company, but soon enough, I'm sure we'll all be back together again. So I want to again Oh, and Teresa Cavaney's also on the line. I'm sorry about that. So I just again want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. We've been in the last year or so, we've hosted now with this appearance every single one of our local elected officials, from Senator Biaggi to Assemblymember Benedetto to Councilmember Jonai, and now obviously very soon we'll have Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cort joining us as well. And it's important that we get out the issues that matter to all of you. And I think this is going to be a great forum for everybody to get their voices heard and their points across. So thank you all, and just bear with us because we're going to try to maximize this time with our two great moderators to make this happen in a way that is productive for all.
Right. So many of the questions that came in were similar. People had similar concerns. So I just want to explain that we combine them into one question. So you may not be acknowledged as the person who sent in the question. So we decided just not to do that, but you'll see that your questions were incorporated into the general questions. That's all I have to say about the questions.
Do you want to introduce the people from the Indivisible Steering Committee on this?
No, not necessarily. I mean, there's Lois, I see, and Jane. Where's Jane? I saw her before. Hi, Jane. Where's Jack? He's back. And I don't know who else anymore I should introduce. We've sort of, we don't steer that much. We're not as formal. We're not a 501c3.
No,
We're
I
an
understand.
informal group, and we don't function that formally. So
no worries. Just wanted to give you
I consider every member that communicates as part of the steering committee. Oh, wait, Jane's
holding something up.
Oh, what is it? Can you read it, Jane? Unmute yourself and read it, because I can't read it.
Yeah, hold on. I'll unmute her. Hold on. I'm gonna unmute Jane here. Ask to unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
We have Lois, John, right? John on our steering committee.
Well, who else?
Andrea is an active member. Ora and Michael. Jerry, Nancy was on. Elise is one of our members. I don't know if I left anybody out, but Cheryl. David comes to our meetings, but he's not on the executive committee. Right?
Good, thank you. That's good. I'm looking to see who else is here. Oh, there's Nancy.
And Nancy, I missed Nancy.
And Felix.
She's not the next.
Confederate statute.
Felix is a member.
Well, they're divided and now.
And
They
they're
should be in museum.
Andrea.
With like burned them.
We should have taken them down a long time ago.
Oh, there's our Congresswoman. Hi. Are you
They
muted?
protested many a times to take it down years ago. I guess the movement wasn't large enough, you know?
Okay, our Congresswoman is here, John. Well, she was, there she is. He jumps around.
About fucking time.
Hey.
So we are so excited that about this virtual meeting. We can't tell you. City Island, of course, opens its arms to you and will again.
Thank you.
I know that your time is extremely limited. So we're going to try to respect that. The questions have been put together. There's at this point, there's around 6 that have been compiled together. And we're going to go back and forth between Rising and Indivisible and asking them of you. And if I could just see where there she is. Luisa. Oh, but then I lose the Congresswoman. Okay, this is crazy. Okay, so I think you start, Luisa.
Yep, Congresswoman, first off, thank you for being here today with us. Though many of us are stuck in our homes, we know the work of an elected official does not take a day off. So thank you for being here. We do have several submitted questions, but before we get to them, feel free to introduce yourself and give some brief opening remarks.
No, of course. Thank you, everyone. Hello. Good evening, I guess I should say, as the sunset's happening later and later. We're getting a little more sunshine, which is one nice development that we're having. Yes, so I'm here. I'm Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, New York's 14th congressional district, which of course includes City Island, also extends throughout neighborhoods in the East Bronx like Pelham Parkway, Park Chester, Throgs Neck, Country Club, Castle Hill. We could go on, Allerton, and it also includes parts of Queens like Jackson Heights and Jackson Heights, Astoria, Woodside, Sunnyside, and yeah, I'm here, and I think what's important is right now we are in the midst of the crossroads of so many different crises, whether it's our community that's coming together to speak up in defense of Black lives and to really address the issues of police brutality. But I think it's also important that we recognize that this is a pandemic inside a pandemic inside of a pandemic. So it is this issue happening inside the context of unprecedented an unprecedented health impact of COVID-19, which was also disproportionately impacting our Black brothers and sisters and people of color as well. And also on top of that, the unprecedented economic fallout from all of the shelter-in-place policies. And our community in particular is also the epicenter within the epicenter in the country. And in the city, New York City was so heavily impacted, but New York 14 in particular was the most heavily impacted congressional district in America by COVID-19. And so our community has been through a lot in the last 3 months or so and continues to go through a lot. But one thing that I'm just extremely, hopeful about is how our community has rallied together, whether it was the March for Black Lives right here in City Island just recently, or, just the way that we are all kind of coming together even before then. I personally have been doing a lot of fundraising and working with members here in the community, many of which who are here on this call. I was just with David. He was schlepping our meals around the other weekend, making sure that we're fundraising and getting meals directly to our constituents and directly to our neighbors throughout this crisis. And so just, in terms of a last 3-month update, I'm happy to say that we initially had set out an initial fundraising goal of maybe $10,000 to raise for immediate meal relief. We blew past that very quickly. Then we got to $100,000, blew past that. We set a goal of $500,000. We blew past that. And so now we are very close to reaching, we have set a goal for $1 million to fundraise $1 million here directly to food and other relief efforts here in the community. And we are now at $850,000. So we're at almost having raised $1 million directly to seniors and anybody who needs a meal. My value is that we should not means test everyone to death. And so if you say you're hungry and you say you need a meal, we've been able to organize people in the community. And it's not just a financial effort, it's been a community effort because volunteers and folks have been able to come in. If you're immunocompromised or don't want to leave your home, we even have people volunteering that are calling, doing community check-in calls, saying, hey, are you all right? And so on top of that, we've made 235,000 constituent calls right here in our district alone. So people are getting called, they are getting checked in on, and they're kind of being ensured and they're being asked, are you okay? And a lot of the time, that's 90% of what people need to feel seen and to feel like someone's looking out for them. And so I'm really proud of how our community has rallied together in all of this adversity. But again, you know, this really points to the larger policy issues and the work that we're doing in Washington and have been doing in Washington. Because as we've seen with each one of these crises, whether it's the health crisis, the economic crisis, or the crisis of racism and racial inequity, all of these issues are pointing to pre-existing problems. COVID, while as a virus is a new issue, the inequities in our healthcare system are not. Our issues with Medicare, our issues with lack of access to health insurance and healthcare in general, has been a pre-existing condition and crisis for the country. And so when COVID hit, it just exploded our inequities in healthcare. It exploded our inequities in wages. It exploded our inequities in when it comes to vulnerable workers and our economy, and also just who gets health insurance and who doesn't get health insurance in our economy. Our essential workers that we rely on the most oftentimes can be the least likely to be insured, as delivery workers and so on. And so that is why when all of this pandemic hit, you know, that's why we said, and we had to double down and saying, we've been fighting for these issues the entire time, whether it's improved and expanded Medicare for all, even if we take the baby step of taking the 40+ million Americans who are newly unemployed in this crisis, even if our first baby step to guaranteed health care is to allow an open enrollment for Medicare for people who are unemployed, I think that would have been an incredibly important step, and it's one that I am pushing for in Congress along with Pramila Jayapal and other progressives, because the other ways just simply aren't working. COBRA is way too expensive, and subsidizing COBRA doesn't really make sense to our lives and our lives as working people. And so I feel as though throughout this entire year, whether it is bringing the environmental injustices as they are experienced by our community to light, in Washington with the Green New Deal, which actually specifically addresses issues that we're dealing with. You know, a lot of times people think environmentalism is about, you know, and I've said this before, a lot of people think environmentalism is like about hugging a tree or saving a mountain, and they don't think about it also as our water being poisoned, or lead being in our paint, or the air that we're breathing being compromised, or sound pollution. And how those issues and those environmental inequities show up in communities like ours, especially working class communities like ours. So it's not just about preservation and public lands, which are extremely important and which we cherish in our district, but it's also about the inequities in the air that we breathe and the water that we drink. And so whether it's bringing environmental issues as they are experienced and representing our experience with them to Congress, whether it's bringing issues of health, whether it's bringing issues of wages, you know, I believe and I'm proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish, not just me alone, but us as a movement, and the perspectives and the testimony of our community, and organizing that pressure into Congress, I think has been an enormous achievement. We've been able to get incredible gains on issues like immigration, and even public health issues as well. You know, the things that aren't as flashy, that don't really make headlines, have been very important accomplishments last year as well. I included quite a few amendments in our appropriations process that, you know, it's funny in this current environment and debating around policing. Last year, we were introducing amendments to shift money out of DEA and into opioid treatment centers. And so we've been taking this approach for quite some time. And with that, I'm proud to have spearheaded efforts to get up, $15 to $20 million allocated to opioid treatment and relief to make sure that we are transitioning people who are struggling with addiction into recovery as well. And so whether it's issues like that, or whether it's larger issues like Medicare for all, and defending our immigrant neighbors, I believe that our district has made a splash and that particularly this district specifically, and our community specifically, I think it's also important for us to talk about our role in the country, because our district is a strong blue district. It is a D+24 district. And so that makes us one of the most progressive districts in the country. And as a result, it also means that representation from our district should be responsible for taking political risks that other districts may not be able to have the liberty to take. And I hear this all the time with my colleagues in Congress, folks that are in tough seats, that are in swing seats. They often tell me, I wish I could say the things that you say. And so thank you for saying them. And so I think it also just points to the fact that we're a team, and we all play a different role in advancing the country. And some of us are the tip of the spear, and others can be there to be backup, but our district has been the tip of the spear. And we've been the tip of the spear for the last year, and we speak truth to power, and we've been able to do all of it without a dime of corporate money, without a dime of lobbyist backing. And it's no surprise that those lobbyists and Big Pharma and Wall Street are now trying to come after us. But that's just a consequence of speaking truth to power. When you speak truth to power, power fights back. But that's okay, because I believe that we've held our own. Clearly we are supported, and we continue to be supported because the grassroots power of this movement has continued to remain so strong. And so I'm very proud of that work. And it also, again, shows that we can get through this as a team. We have a huge election, not even just a primary, but in November. And we are coming together as a party. I'm happy to say that I have joined the Climate Unity Task Force. I am co-chairing it with Secretary John Kerry to inform Joe Biden's climate policy. And guess what? We can nudge and we can make it better, and we'll work as a team. And I'm happy to say that, these meetings are ongoing. I just chaired a meeting yesterday, but I can say, and I do believe that we are actually making movement here. And a lot of people want to focus on the fact that we may be coming from different places, but that doesn't, of course we are, because there's hundreds of elected representatives in the same party and millions of people in the same party in the United States, and we're all going to have different perspectives. But the thing that I think is really exciting is that we've all shown a little bit of give and take, and I'm really proud to say that these conversations are kind of winning over, Vice President Biden in some of these respects. And there are areas where his team is saying, you know what, you guys have a point. And there are areas where I wish they would go and they are not going, and that's okay. We're gonna keep fighting, but we have such a huge task ahead, and I'm so happy to be joining each and every one of you in that task.
Great, thank you. So I know that you have a time limit of only a half hour with us, and we have at least 6 questions.
I'll try to go fast. Lightning round.
All right, I'm going to start it off then. Thank you, Congresswoman, for that overview. The first question, and these questions, just to restate, are from both City Island Indivisible and City Island Rising. Do you support defunding the police department? If yes, do you agree that many people incorrectly think that defunding means no police force? Please help us understand what that term means.
Sure thing. So I think this is a great question, and so I think there's a couple of things to clarify. So first, let's set the stage. Sorry, I'm moving my chair a little bit. So let's set the stage. First of all, I think it's important that we contextualize the conversation. So when we talk about Anything that has to do with police budgets, this is a city council and mayoral conversation in terms of where the decision is made. That being said, I have waded into this because I try to listen to our community and as many issues as possible. And the answer overall in policy is yes. And that is because the New York City Police Department has a $6 billion a year budget. That's billion with a B. That's more than we spend on youth, health, housing, and homelessness services combined in the city. And I think that that budget may be too big. And what defunding the police means is that we allocate some of those funds and remove it away from the policing budget and towards investments like youth, homelessness, health, and housing that creates enough, that create the stability in people's lives that prevents crime and drives down crime in the first place. Now, the answer to the second question, do I believe that some people may be misunderstanding the conversation? Yes, I do. And I think that's a completely fine, I think that's a completely fine state of affairs. It's just acknowledging the fact of that conversation. But the reason that I think it's important that we talk about it is because, and the reason I try not to be overly critical of that is because this is the language that's coming directly from the grassroots movements in the streets. And so my goal is to not undercut or undermine some of these leaders, but I think my goal and my aim in all of this, especially because I'm not on a city council and I don't have a mayoral seat, is to at least educate people about what people are actually saying when they're saying this term. Whether we want to use different terms, whether we want to say reallocate, whether you want to say, redistribute, I think those are totally fine. In bringing that up, especially if you're talking to someone that doesn't quite understand, I think that's totally fine. I have no problem with that. But in terms of the actual policy, what people are actually asking for, which, is to go from 6 billion to a modest 5 billion, I think $5 billion is okay. And also the other question I get from that too is people say, oh, well, are you going to fire all these police officers? Do you think you're going to, end policing? And so the answer to that, of course, is no, but also it's not just about, even when you talk about this $1 billion cut, right now, the NYPD, or rather the city, has a commitment 1-to-1 to replace every retiring police officer with a new one. We don't even make that commitment for teachers. We don't even do that for teachers. And so, I think that it's an opportunity to say, listen, if the New York City Police Department, if our city's police department stood alone, we would be the 33rd largest military budget in the world. So I think that we can have conversations about should we be having a 1-to-1 replacement? Should we be putting millions of dollars in facial recognition technology that is not ready for prime time and installing that in our subway stations when they regularly misidentify people of color? I don't think any of this is appropriate. I don't believe that our police should be militarized. And I think that all of that is a conversation when we talk about the policy of defunding. Again, if we want to talk about reframing it in other ways that people can understand, we can have that conversation. But I think when it comes to the actual substance of the policy, I am supportive.
Okay, we have to hurry along here. This is not a, this might be a little awkward, but it's a concern that people have. Some people have the perception that you might be a little overly focused and interested in low income and younger constituents in District 14. How are you representing others, older and middle class?
I think it's it's another excellent question. And, our district is incredibly diverse. And, when I say diverse, I mean, yes, we are diverse racially, but we are also diverse in terms of income, in terms of our housing status, whether you're in dense apartment housing or whether you're a homeowner, in age, and so on and so forth. And it's something about our district that I'm very proud about. When it comes to middle class and concerns for some of our seniors, I'm very proud to have championed a lot of different issues, whether it is really getting into the nitty gritty of protecting Social Security, and also just a lot of quality of life issues that we have followed up. Again, they may not make headlines, but we've been working on cleaning up our Amtrak stations here, especially in more residential neighborhoods. We've been following up on a lot of noise issues and complaints, especially with LaGuardia Airport right here in our district. I've joined the Quiet Skies Caucus to try to make sure that, to a certain extent, we have an airport in the district. There's going to be noise, but we're trying to make sure that that the routes are equitable, that people are experiencing as little noise as possible, and that we're addressing some of these very kind of, everyday concerns, especially as well, when it comes to homeowners and when it comes to middle class folks. COVID has impacted all of us. And when we have conversations, for example, on rent cancellation, we're not here to say, hey, we're going to leave mom and pop landlords holding the bag in all of this crisis. We have been pushing very strongly for mortgage moratoriums, as well for anyone who has renters or tenants that have been suddenly laid off or are not receiving assistance of any kind. And so, I definitely hear some of those issues. Or are we addressing everybody? And I'm happy to say that it's a really strong commitment of mine that we do. And if there is an issue that isn't being addressed, we're more than happy to engage on it.
Thank you. So number 3, what are your plans to affect climate change in the country, and specifically in District 14 at this time? Our neighborhood has been identified as a high-risk area for flooding in the future. You help to bring federal dollars from either FEMA or the Army Corps of Engineers to address resiliency in our regions. In our region.
Yes, so, short term, we've been very involved. As you all know, this has been a huge priority in the district. And so short term, we've been involved in even smaller issues. So for example, the Army Corps of Engineers was conducting a study for building a kind of seawall or a kind of a locking sort of situation where which would essentially protect Manhattan from rising sea levels, but it would have blocked the water up north of it and almost made sea level rises even worse in our community in Bronx Neck, in City Island, in coastal areas of the Bronx and coastal areas of Queens. And this was being pursued very seriously. And this is an area where my office intervened and where we reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers and we said, we cannot accept that you're just going to sacrifice our communities for more affluent ones, which is why economic and social justice is such an important part of environmental and climate policy, and said, can you help me find my dad? And she was accompanied by her 17-year-old older sister, who was the first in her family to go to college. And she was going to college in Buffalo, took a bus all the way down to walk with her little sister to help us find her dad. And we said, okay, tell us everything. And we contacted their mother, who was also, of course, terrified. And we had found out that ICE had taken him to the airport after 20 years to send him back to I believe, West Africa, and to a country in West Africa. And you can only imagine how horrifying of a situation this is, to be sent to another country, a place that you don't know, that you have not been to in decades, where you don't know anybody, where you don't know when you're going to see your children. I mean, it was so horrifying. And thankfully, we were able to get him out of the airport. He continued to be detained in ICE facilities and for a long time. And we didn't give up. And we brought in members of the community. We brought in pro bono legal volunteers with legal aid. Our community rallied around him. And after a fight, we were able to get him out and reunite him with his family. And to me, the pride in that is not just the enormous impact we were able to have in one family's life, but the fact that the community came in and rallied around and organized to make it happen, because we couldn't have done it alone. My office, as just part of an ethics rule, I'm not allowed to provide legal counsel to the community. But then you have a family that can't afford this legal counsel to stay together. And so everyday people in the community stood up and said, I'm going to help. And that organizing and that rallying was so incredibly important. And I'm really proud to say that we actually brought his family to the State of the Union. And it was just, I think, it was everything that's so incredible about us, about City Island, about the Bronx, about what New York City is all about. And I hope that we never have to deal with that situation ever again with any other family in our community. But it's so incredible to know that when something like that does happen, the whole community will rally around it.
Mm-hmm. Well, those were all our questions. I'm sorry we lost half of our people, but hopefully we'll have another time after the 23rd to talk with you about what's, the next step.
Absolutely.
So,
definitely will.
And
thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you so
much. Of course. Thank you all so much.
Thank
you.
you.
Well.
Bye. Be well.
Okay, we're gonna just give it a quick second here because we're gonna transition over to our general meeting. Everybody, I know we had at one point 58 people, and now we have in the high 30s, so that is still or the low 30s rather. So we still have a good portion of the people who were on board earlier. This meeting is recording now, so we should be good. If everybody has a question, just, again, use your comment section because we just want to continue with the meeting, and then we will post it online afterwards. And again, my apologies for everybody with the language and everything else that transpired there. If you don't know somebody, just leave them in the waiting room. So I'm saying one person here who I don't know, so I will bounce them. If anyone knows who JR Split is, tell them to.
Yeah, JR Split is Jane, I think.
Oh, okay. Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. Wait, let me just look at yes, I'm almost positive. Just a second.
I don't want to knock anyone out. Then I will be careful then. Okay. Is Lois on the call? Oh, Lois, you're on the call. So yeah. I'm gonna ask to unmute Lois, and I'm just checking if our guests I know Fernando is already on the call, so I'm gonna unmute him as well. So this is the call to order for the Rising meeting. We have a busy agenda. We're gonna get right to it. We're gonna take a step from our Congresswoman and just persevere here and just get down to business. So Lois, are you there?
She's muted.
I unmuted her. I asked to unmute her. Let me try it again.
Unmute.
You're unmuted now, Lois.
Hi.
Okay, so do you want to take it away and introduce our first guest?
Okay. Well, first I want to say that was a really exciting meeting, but it was scary as anything. I had never experienced that before, and that was frightening. But it also shows you, we have a lot of work to do. John, first let me start with Barbara Zahm and I attended a conference about a year ago on emergencies and storms and city, and talked about our area. And I saw a map that had City Island in red, indicating how City Island is very vulnerable to any kind of major storm or event, weather event. And it kind of frightened me quite a bit. Here I just had bought a house. I'm on City Island now 4 years. And I'm saying, oh my God, you know, I think about how we would escape City Island with one causeway, one main street. Anyway, given my past occupation, I'm a community organizer. I work for AARP. I have been very interested in helping City Island to organize so that we can, I know we have an emergency plan for evacuation, but I think it probably needs some work. So John invited me to a phone call about a week ago, and I met Fernando Tirado. And Fernando is the director of new initiatives at the Bureau of Bronx Neighborhood Health for the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. It's a big title, Fernando. I wonder if it's all that fits on one card. But he's been an advocate, and he has served the Bronx for a lot of years in a lot of different areas. He was district manager for Community Board 7, and he's done quite a bit of work in the Bronx. So he approached us with another possibility of a project. He is setting up something called COAD. COADs are communities, I'll get it right. Community, he's gonna have to tell you
Okay.
All right, but I'd like to say that I have a lot to learn, and so does Rising, about COAD and how we might form a neighbor-to-neighbor supportive network and my interest is in identifying and even mapping our City Island community for where the vulnerable people are, street by street, mapping out, you know, where the disabled are, where are the mentally challenged, where are the elders who need, who are vulnerable, so that in some kind of emergency, we actually do have a plan for support for those vulnerable older and younger people who need our help. And I think this COAD might give us that opportunity to organize City Island. So I said to John today, I'm not looking to lead this. I would need a team of people from Rising and other organizations who would work together to really form a neighbor-to-neighbor network to support the people on City Island. So Fernando, I'd like you to expound on my explanation.
Well, thank you, Lois, for the introduction and for explaining it. I do see Nancy Keck over there. I just want to say hi. There are a few faces that I am familiar with. So once again, my name is Fernando Tirado. I'm the Director of New Initiatives. Everything is abbreviated, by the way, Lois, on the business card. It's alphabet soup, and you don't really know what it means. But I have approached John and some other folks. Actually, it was the other way around. John approached me about several months ago with regards to trainings. I'm also a naloxone trainer. I'm a mental health first aid instructor. And I started working on providing these trainings to folks on City Island. And before or in the midst of the pandemic, I talked to him about something else that we were trying to implement throughout the Bronx, and that were these COADs, community organizations active in disasters. And a COAD is similar to City Island Rising, similar to all the other groups, the artist groups, the faith-based groups, the businesses. understanding what everyone else's needs are and working with each other for to help them during a disaster and after a disaster. But there's also the resiliency portion, right? How do people prepare before a disaster happens? You know, I have helped City Island before with post Sandy, helping some of the businesses get back online. There's been the Legionnaires issue in the Bronx, the number of heat waves that we have. So disasters come in many forms. And disasters are not going to wait, right? So the next disaster is certainly not going to wait for COVID-19 to be over and done with before it is implemented. So the idea of establishing these COAD is so that organizations and residents know what resources exist, what are the challenges that they face, and how can you best help individuals recover from and hopefully prevent unnecessary death, right? What the Congresswoman stated earlier is in fact correct. The Northeast Bronx, portions of the Northeast Bronx, have the highest rate of death in the entire city. And most of that were folks in nursing homes, folks who were older, folks who didn't have or who had mobility issues. Those were the individuals who were mostly impacted. You know, my concern in particular about COVID-19 and City Island is that as the city starts to open up and the businesses start to open up, people who are potentially infected are going to come to City Island, right? They want to eat, they want to enjoy, they don't know they're sick, and you'll see somewhat of, it's not a second wave, but a reformation of the first wave, right? That might happen the same way that it is happening in other tourist neighborhoods, tourist communities throughout the country, particularly like Florida. So I would love to be able to work with you. And unfortunately, we had somebody from New York City Emergency Management who jumped off of the last Zoom call because of the bad vibes, for lack of a better word. But I would like to work with New York City Emergency Management and the individuals on City Island, with the communities on the other end of the causeway, right? Mostly Co-op City, most of the Northeast Bronx, to see how we could develop a plan for the Northeast Bronx and specifically a plan for City Island to be ready, to be prepared, right? So New York City Emergency Management has a community emergency management toolkit that I would love to sit down and bring Moira Washington back and have her go with this plan. The Department of Health has a pandemic emergency preparedness kit, toolkit. And I would really like to sit down and go with through that with City Island Rising, because we should be preparing for a real second wave, and not a continuing spread of the first wave, but a real second wave that could manifest itself come October, November, December, and how people are going to prepare for that, right? Does the second wave mean that the virus gets weaker, or does it mean that it gets stronger? We don't know. But my concern is to save lives and to prevent as much death as possible with regards to disasters and emergencies. So this COAD idea is actually pretty new for the Bronx, right? We only have one other COAD in the South Bronx, but every other borough has multiple COADs that have existed for years. And so it sort of served as the impetus for me to try to get these things up and running, to try to get people up to speed so that we can look out for one another, right? The other thing about COADs is that they add a sense of social cohesion and a sense of social resiliency. And that cohesion and resiliency saves lives. Not a new bridge, not a lot of infrastructure, not a bulkhead or other infrastructure to prevent a flooding. People save people. And that's what we would like to do with establishing a COAD on City Island. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them if I can.
So what we're going to do now, folks, is if anyone has a question, use that hand function. and raise your hand, and we will unmute you to ask your question of Fernando. And again, we're looking for people to join this effort. We're looking to get a volunteer team together. So just raise your hand, and we will call on you if you'd like to speak. Okay, we're going to email something out to our members. If you'd like to be a part of this, just let us know. And you can email cityislandrising, one word, @gmail.com. And Fernando, the discussion continues, my friend.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Pleasure.
much.
I'll hang around for a little bit more.
Absolutely. And Lois had her hand up, so I'm switching to her. Yep.
I think Lois is muted.
Yeah, I keep asking her to unmute, so we'll see. Lois, are you there? It's different as I was found out.
How about
There.
that?
There we are.
Okay, Fernando, I want to thank you for introducing this, and John, we're going to, work on getting a team together. So if you are interested, please let John know, and we can begin to figure out how we can organize on City Island. There's a lot to be done, and I think it would be something that's very necessary. So I hope you will just step forward. We need a team. Thanks, Fernando, and thanks, John.
Thank you, Lois. And again, we need people to join this team, as Lois said. So, if you have time, just send me a message, email me, email the Rising inbox. We need more here. This is another example of us helping our neighbors in times of need. I know a lot of us have been out there delivering masks, delivering food. This could be another good thing for that effort. Nancy asked a question, which was, and I'm going to just read it here, Nancy, I hope that's okay. It's just how many people are needed, any specific skills, and ideally, we'd like to have, from what I've spoken to Lois about, and Fernando, I'll leave you to talk about skills since I see you're still here.
So the first skill is human skill, right? You have to be willing and wanting to care for your neighbor. That's the most important thing. Second, right, we want to look at what everybody's skills are and then match them to specific needs. So if you have skills in database design or in food prep, or even if it's something as might seem mundane, but as being able to take care of somebody's kids or somebody's grandparent in case of an emergency, those are all skills. So no specific skill set other than wanting to be a neighbor.
Great.
But it does take people, right? So the other question was how many people are needed. It takes people, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, obviously we'd like to get a team to do this of about 5 people together. So, and that. Lois, you're unmuted. I saw your hand was up.
No, I'm trying to mute.
Okay, no problem. We'll mute you and we'll lower the hand. How about that? Okay. Fernando, thank you again so much for your time, and we'll continue on with this effort. Our second guest who's on right now, everyone here is familiar with our ongoing battles with getting better transportation, particularly public transportation, to and from City Island. Obviously, a lot of us were excited because the Bronx bus redesign was going to be 24/7 and solely dedicated to our community. That had been capping off a 4 to 5 year effort. Unfortunately, as I've said before in past meetings, as the economy has kind of went on hold, so the MTA redesign plans, and we were one of the few communities that actually fared pretty well in that. But we may need to undertake some future advocacy, and I figured the best thing we could do in that effort was to invite next guest, Stephanie Veras of the Riders Alliance, onto the call. because she would be able to really help us understand kind of different broad-based advocacy and how we can work together to really effectuate change. So Stephanie, I see you're unmuted already, and I'm going to hand it over to you. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean, and thank you everyone for being here. So just really quickly, I'm Stephanie. I'm a community organizer at the Riders Alliance. And for those who don't know the Riders Alliance, we're a grassroots organization of subway and bus riders. We're an organization that's been around for approximately 8 years, and we've been working a lot on some of our wins or some of the campaigns that we recently have won. Was the passing of congestion pricing last year in the state Senate. Actually the bus redesigns that John said, our organization actually fought to make sure that the MTA would actually do redesigns and think about changing and improving service across the borough. We also have been pushing Mayor de Blasio for more bus lanes. We helped pass fair fares, which is reduce cards for low-income New Yorkers. And so we've had a lot of campaigns, some a little bit smaller scale, some of them a little bit more citywide. And actually today here, for the first time in the Riders Alliance history, we're doing some federal advocacy. But I'm actually, so there's a lot happening on transit. So I'm actually just gonna break it up into 3 parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about the federal work and what we're doing at this moment. I'm going to talk about the state work, which is with the MTA governor, which we'll talk about the redesign. Then I'll talk a little bit about Mayor de Blasio and the city work about bus lanes. When it comes to public transportation, one of the things that makes it so difficult to bring about change is that sometimes you have to deal with different agencies. You have to deal with the governor, you have to deal with the mayor, and the state and the city are completely different. And so sometimes that can slow things down, it's particularly buses, because the streets are run by Mayor de Blasio and the buses are run by the governor, which runs the MTA. And that is what sometimes make it so complicated to win. Let me just dive right in. So as we all know, COVID has impacted, our way of life, and that has really particularly impacted MTA finances. So the MTA has a $16 billion operating budget. And, sometimes we forget that the MTA is not just subways and buses, it's subways and buses, it's Metro North, it's Long Island Railroad, and it's also bridges and tunnels. And, with all of the reduced riders, we've seen MTA losing around $200 million a week, totaling up to $1 billion a month in lost fares. And the thing about this, why this is so important, is that out of the operating budget, 40% of the operating budget comes from fares. So that means that there's a huge gap right now in the MTA's budget, and that impacts the ability to run more service, the ability to pay workers, and just really keep the lights on. So for that reason, we've really turned, to the federal government. And the federal government is the only one that can run a deficit. Normally, we would call on the state to step in and find some kind of funds, but right now the state is making cuts as well as the city. So we've turned to the federal government to help. The Congress member did talk about the CARES Act and the HEROES. So I won't go too deep into that. But in the CARES, which was the first federal bill that passed in March, MTA got $3.8 billion in relief. And that has been extremely helpful. But as we all know, New York has been really impacted, right? We're entering I think 100 days now, like 3 months, and we won't be back up to what we were in like 4 or 5 months. So the MTA has requested another 3.8 to continue to run service. And so that's kind of where we are right now. So as the Congress member mentioned, there was the HEROES Act, which passed on the House of Representatives, but not on the Senate. And so we're working really, really hard to make sure that the Senate includes the money for the MTA so that we can continue to run service. And so just really quickly, today we had our digital day of action where we had people submit their photo petitions telling Senator Schumer to rescue riders. And so right now we're really focused on telling Schumer why transit is important. And we know that transit is important because it allows us to get around, allows us to be independent, it allows us to not have crowded streets with cars, and it's also extremely important to our economic engine. the MTA, New York City is 10% of the GDP of this entire country, and that is because we have a huge transit system that allows 8 million to 10 million people take it every single day, and you don't have to live in the same area. You can come from all parts. And so the last thing I'll say about the federal government before I step into the state is, you know, right now the Senate is negotiating. You know, they want to do another bill. They don't know will it be as big as the House of Representatives, and there's some back and forth. And so we really have to make the case that MTA needs a 3.89 or that they need. And so just the last thing I'll add is that next Thursday, if anyone here is available, we're having a transit talk with Senator Schumer. From 7:30 to 8:30, and so I'm happy to share the link with John after this so everyone can join. You know, we have him for an hour, and we're going to be asking him a series of questions, not just about subways and buses, but subways, buses, paratransit, LRR, Metro North, and street safety. So we're going to cover all transportation. If you are available, please join. And if you want to participate in our photo petition, please feel free to take a picture of yourself in your home or at your near bus stop or a subway station and tell Schumer to prioritize transit. So now I talked about federal government, I'll just go into state. And so all of this is really important because, right, if we don't have the money from the federal government, the state will need to make some decisions, and that means that they will have to cut service and or also raise fares. There was a report that, you know, they could raise fares up to $9. I mean, if they jump that you know, right now it's $2.75, but, you know, to jump to $9 is pretty extreme in one jump. But I think it was just a report to really showcase like how things can get if we don't get this money. So I'll talk a little bit more about the state and what's happening. So there's a lot happening on the state. So as we all know, phase 1 opened. You know, we started phase 1 on Monday, which means that MTA has resumed to normal service. We're currently trying to push them to not go beyond normal because, as we know, normal before, especially for, I'm going to talk mostly about buses because I know City Island has a lot of buses. You know, that queue, oh my God, the BX29 comes like every 20 minutes, you know, like that's not good. Like we can't return, that cannot be our normal, right? We need to have that bus coming a little bit more often. We need to push MTA to be doing 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We cannot have people waiting 20 minutes and then getting onto a crowded bus. And so we are currently trying to push MTA to add more service on buses. And the particular thing is what we saw in phase 1 is that while subway service only got back to 15% of what they were before COVID, bus ridership is 4% back up to what it used to be. So that means, and actually out of all the methods of transit, buses is the most popular one, and more people are on buses. And that is just something that we should be considering, and we should be challenging the MTA to add more service. And the one thing for that is actually a report by Scott Stringer earlier this in March mentioned that 40% of all essential workers in New York were taking the bus. So we know that our essential riders are taking buses, whether because they live on it or because they feel safer. Whatever the reason is, that means that we need to have more service. Some more stuff on the MTA. As we all know, trains are closed from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. Because of, you know, they're cleaning and they're doing a whole bunch of things. While we support cleaning and we support a clean transit system, we do, the Riders Alliance is trying to see when they are going to reopen, especially when we fully enter the phase 4. You know, right now MTA is paying Uber rides for people to get around, which is very expensive. And we should be using our public transit system, right? Because buses don't do what the subways do, right? A subway can get you from the 6 line can get you from the Bronx to downtown Manhattan. If you take the 5, you can get into Brooklyn. A bus cannot do that. Buses do not do a lot of cross-borough connection. I mean, the Q50 does the Queens to the Bronx, but that's one of the very few buses that does interborough connectivity. So we're definitely calling on the MTA to do that. Right now, actually, we're actually doing a survey, and we'll send it to y'all, which is asking people to tell us what you guys need in the reopening. We're collecting results from riders just so we know what to call on the governor, especially after phase one. We'll have a little bit more information. And some other things that has been happening with the state, as we said, the redesign is on pause. The MTA felt that it did not make sense to change all the routes in this time, but they've said that they are committed to it, but we have to be vigilant and demand for a timeline. Obviously not right now, we're still in a sensitive time, but once New York City is up and running, and one of the things that we're actually going to be focusing on right now is trying to get the MTA to expedite their all-door boarding policy. And 2-3 years ago, they said that they would allow people to get on through all doors and there'll be like a reader, but buses were like at the end of that phasing of this new technology. And so we're going to be demanding for a faster implementation, just because we see that there are more bus riders. And at this moment, MTA is not collecting any fares on buses. All buses are free because they're entering through the rear door, but there is no way to pay. And so, and as we continue to not collect fares, this will continue to deplete the budget of MTA, and what that means that it will hurt riders in the longer term, because MTA will then be like, well, I have to cut service. And so with a new fare technology, you can pay. I mean, a lot of people already have Metro cards and they haven't been able to use them because they can't get on through the front door. So that's just a little bit what's happening on the state. We are going to do, like I said, the survey, and we're planning to launch the results of the survey sometime at the end of June, early July. And I will share this, maybe someone, we're planning to do a Cuomo-style briefing release. So as we all know, Cuomo has had these notorious briefings with these amazing PowerPoints. So we're going to try to do something similar to kind of list our demands when it comes to public transportation. And the last thing before I open up to questions is the city. So as I mentioned, when it comes to buses, they're mostly stuck in traffic. So we've been able to, been calling on the mayor to get bus lanes and provide street infrastructure to our streets. So last year, the mayor committed to increasing bus speeds by 25%, and that meant adding 15 miles of bus lanes per year, each year. And, he did a whole bunch of bus lanes last year. Most of them were scattered, and there was one in the Bronx, but on the west side of the Bronx. And then this year he went off and decided to cut the bus lanes out of the budget. And we have been fighting against that. We've been pushing back. And actually on Monday, he announced 20 miles of bus lanes, and he included 5 busways. And for those who don't know what a busway is, it's when it's only buses and trucks, no personal vehicles. And I believe that they're trying to see if Fordham will be a busway. So that's kind of what we've been working on. The MTA then requested 60 miles of bus lanes. And so now we're trying to continue to push the mayor to add more bus lanes, because the MTA is seeing the need that there will be a high demand on buses. And if there is no priority on our streets, the buses will get clogged, and it's going to impact everyone. People are going to be stuck on buses, and it's just going to slow our city down. And we're still calling for the mayor cut the bus program for fiscal year 20 and 21. He put back the 20, but did not put back the 21. So we're working hard on that because we need to be planning for the future. And that is pretty much all that I have. It's 3 different layers of a cake. The city with the mayor and the bus lanes, the state with our reopening, more bus service, and reopening our subways, to return back to our 24 hours. And then the federal government, which is to get the $3.9 billion in the next federal aid package with Senator Schumer. And so those are the 3 things, and I'll stop talking to see if there are any questions about any of our advocacy efforts.
I think we all learned more about buses, than who knows that anyone even knew, but that's good. That's why, we have advocates who are at the table and are knowledgeable about those things. So Stephanie, thank you so much for that wide overview. And you're right, the Bronx 29, that's 20 minutes when it's on peak. That's not even 20 minutes. Usually it can go a half hour or more. So we've got to do better there. So does anyone have a question for Stephanie with respect to bus service? And you also handle the express buses too, right?
So we don't work on express buses. That's
Okay.
not something that we've worked on, but we are thinking of expanding. Right, we're a very small organization. There's only 8 of us, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I understand. So that was, yeah.
How can the Omni program help improve service? Yes.
Yeah.
So I think the Omni program can help improve service in a few different ways. So at least on buses, because it'll make a bigger difference there. Right now, for those who, let's see, for example, you wait for the bus for 30 minutes, you have 10 people lined up, and everyone like swipes in and out, and that slows down the process. So with Omni, you are able to use 2 doors, and you're able to tap, and you're able to go. And then another thing too is for folks who are in wheelchairs or any seniors. Normally, unfortunately, the thing is that there's a senior who has to get on, you have to like pull down the ramp, and people can't get onto the bus until the person gets on. And so actually this will help speed up this, because if there's someone who needs assistance, can get on, and everyone else can get onto the back. And so when the ramp is folded up, the bus can take off. And remember, buses are the one item that's actually truly accessible, because all buses have a ramp and everyone can get on it, where that tends to be the preferred method for folks who can't go up and down steps. And that sometimes can slow people down, and Omni can help that process. And the other thing too is that you'll have more flexibility. You can like pay with your phone. You don't have to go to a line to refill your card. And that's one of the things for bus riders a lot, is that we don't have fare machines by us. You have to go to a subway stop to go and reload your card. And Omni takes away having to go to Parkchester Station, or I'm forgetting the last stop on the 6th line, to
Pelham Bay.
Pelham Bay, there we go, to reload your card. And so that also helps, also just how for the rider to have a little bit more choice and flexibility.
Yeah. And then I see there's one more here from Dr. Gannon. Could cross-district services be open?
I don't know I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Gannon, are you there? Because we'll pull you right up here. Hold on.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Ask your question, sir.
Well, it's going to what one of your points was that, there's only very few buses that go across, the Burrs. And I'm wondering, under the circumstances where they could really open up a new wave of buses that go everywhere, essentially, wherever you needed it, especially the Bronx and the Manhattan, Queens, you name it. Instead of having to rely on double-barrel subway rides, could there be a bus services that cover all of those options?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's actually something that we were fighting for the Bronx redesign. And we were successful to get a bus from, actually the Q50, I believe, got extended into LaGuardia. So we were able to get that bus going directly to LaGuardia. And we were fighting for, we actually extended the Q44. And so that's actually a big, one of the biggest things that we're calling for in these redesigns, because it's not just in the Bronx, it's in every borough. So we're really trying to push the MTA to think about cross-borough connectivity. And I think this COVID response and, and shutting down the subways now even makes more of the argument.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. I guess, is there anything, and as you said earlier, we're coming off of a major pandemic here. So like we all get that. I guess, is there anything we can be doing in the meantime that we should be focused on to try to, kind of keep our bus and our transportation needs at the forefront? Because we're one of the few areas of the city where, it is the city that sleeps. It sleeps between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. when the bus doesn't work. So would you have any tips on things we should be considering? Are there any things that your group is doing that we could partner on?
Yeah, so I think right now, I think this is the first thing. One is calling Schumer and telling him that without this money, the buses can't function from 1 to 5 a.m. I think that's a very clear thing. MTA was going to do it. They made the commitment. And if they don't have the funds, they probably won't make that commitment. So that's one, is calling Senator Schumer. Number two, I think it's calling contacting Sarah Feinberg and Governor Cuomo. Those are the two people about, and this is something that we can do together. Right now, we're not on the redesign aspect, but I think just reminding Sarah and the governor that we want the bus redesign to happen.
Sure.
Right. I think those are the two things, because Andy Byford, who right before the pandemic, who was like someone who actually understood buses and loved buses and wanted to make our system better, is no longer with us. And Sarah Feinberg now is not a bus person. She's a politician. She's a communications professional, right? She's not going to think about these minute details like Andy Byford did. And so I think the two things is Senator Schumer come to our transit talk and let Sarah Feinberg know that that you're counting on her to deliver for the Bronx and to deliver on the Bronx bus redesign. And we know we'll be starting that, and we'll update you when we start putting our pressure. Sure. But first we need the money from the federal government so we can actually keep the lights on.
Now, I noticed that you focused on Senator Schumer. Is Senator Gillibrand and is our Congresswoman who was just on the call, they're totally on board? We don't need to worry about them?
Yes, so Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cort. I just want to call her AOC. I'm such a millennial. AOC. Yes, she has signed on. She is supportive. Actually, we're working with her at the moment on a particular letter. So one of the things that, so Sarah Feinberg, one of the first things that she did when she became a board member was call for more cops on the subway. So at the beginning of 2020, they decided to hire 500 cops. They did not complete the hiring. And so right now, with all that is going on, they were able to hire like 150 cops so far. So there's a dilemma right now where there's NYPD cops in the MTA, but the MTA is a state agency. So the state agency cannot tell the NYPD cops what to do. So the MTA was like, well, I'm just going to create my own force, and they created 500 of them. And so right now we're actually working with AOC to see if they will reverse their decision to hire the remaining 300 cops. So we're in talks right now with her to get that letter out and tell Sarah Feinberg. And I don't know if anyone knows about Sarah Feinberg, but she is someone who has told riders, she has said some very weird things. And so she's a very interesting character. So we're trying to put a lot of pressure on her to focus on service and not other things.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. And, we look forward to working with you in ongoing partnership. And if there are things we can do to be supportive of what you're doing, let us know, and we'll take steps to do that. So thank you so much. And I see you just shared something in the comments there, so everybody can check that out. Stephanie, thank you.
Thank you so much, and have a lovely night. And
yes. Thank you, Stephanie. So we have a few things here on the agenda. So I'm going to start with new business, and we're going to take on a few things. They're all non-controversial in nature, but if anybody has any questions, use that hand. I'll unmute you. You can ask your questions. The first motion is to write a letter to the New York City Department of Information Technology and ask that they examine ways to improve cell phone reception within Pelham Bay Park. Some people might not know this, but City Island Road was identified as one of the worst cell phone areas within the city of New York. So what we're trying to do here is to push them to, consider new ways to augment cell phone service, so that if you're out in the park, you don't get dropped calls. If you're on your phone as you leave the island, as many of us often are in a young professional world, that your cell phone service won't be adversely affected and your calls won't be dropped every time you come to or from your home. So does anyone have a question on this before I put up a motion to pass? And I see somebody here as a comment. Okay. Does anyone have a question on this? Concern?
Raise your hand.
Yes, you're right up. You guys are right up there. Yvette and Nancy, go ahead.
Yeah, John, I really ill advise you to do that. They can't wait to put that crap up. They'll put it up all over the place. Go through Pelham Park and wait. Let you give yourself a couple of minutes to call it. When you encourage these people to start putting stuff up, they're going to put it up everywhere. You're not going to want it. And now it's 5G. So it's a bad idea.
Well, this wouldn't be in residential areas. This is going to be within the park overall. I just want to be clear about that. We're not looking to put this near anybody's home, because I remember, Nancy, when they put the one near the school, you were a tremendous advocate opposing that because of real health risks. So I'm very sympathetic to your concerns. I understand your concerns. What I'm going to do is I'm going to narrowly stipulate, to be placed within, not near residential homes or schools or anything like that.
Okay, I don't trust them. They'll find a loophole. I don't trust
Well,
them.
let's see what they come back to us with. This is just asking for them for a proposal.
I just want to put my 2 cents in.
I always want to hear it. You know that.
This is just for a proposal, right, John?
Yeah, this is just for a proposal to start the conversation going. So we will, again, this is just to get the ball rolling. And again, the organizations like this are set up to better the community writ large. So that is what we are trying to do there. The next thing that we have, does anyone have any more questions, more concerns? Okay. I'm going to make the motion to pass it. Can I get a second of the motion?
I'll second the motion if it's just for the proposal.
Yeah, and we will amend it with to reflect Nancy's very legitimate concerns. So I want to make clear that's why we do this all on a call, to take the best of everybody. All in favor, just raise your hand. Okay. Are there any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you all. The second motion rather, is to draft a letter to our state delegation. And this is, and we've all seen this. This is the rise of the derelict vessels all around the Eastchester Bay, particularly near the bridge and near Rodman's Neck. And what we're trying to do here that we really need to focus on is that, we're fortunate, the city council, through our council member, through just the city at large, they will every so often allocate funding to clean it up, but that's dealing with it on the back end, not the front end. And what we need to do is push on our state elected officials to introduce legislation that when they can identify the boat, to go at the owners, make sure they're cleaning up their own mess, it's not wasting taxpayer dollars, and kind of deal with it that way. Rose, I see you have your hand up, so I'm going to come to you. Hold on. Rose, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just raising my hand for the last one. Yes, you said to raise
okay, all
my
right.
hand.
Good to know. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. So this would just be to write a letter to them asking that legislation be considered to kind of provide greater oversight onto these vessels, because this really is a broader problem than just our little section of the Long Island Sound. So we want to move on that. We want to work in partnership with our elected officials. Kate, I see your hand is up. I'm going to unmute you. Hold on. Go ahead, Kate.
Do you have any? Hey, this is Alex and Kate here.
Oh, hey, how are you?
Great job, buddy. Love the goatee.
Oh, this is, yeah. Thank
Don't shave it. Don't shave it. All right.
Well,
But my question is, do you have any details about the maritime restrictions on the boat policy? Are there any fine lines that you could fill in for us?
Yeah. So in other states like Georgia, what they'll do is if they can make out who owns the boat, either through registration numbers, they have like a whole program in place, and they will actually tell the boat owner, remove your debris that you are responsible for, or we're going to suspend your driver's license. And you'd be amazed how quickly people then remove those things. So, we're trying to think of some different ways to deal with this, a little bit outside the box thinking, because what's working, what's happening now isn't working. We're just cleaning up garbage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, clearly it's not working. I had an old catchphrase that city islands where old boats go to die. And clearly we have a new water hazard every week where their boats sinking. They're commercial marinas. They're local businesses that are endorsing this sort of maltreatment. Never mind the detritus and flotsam. You know, what about the entire boats that are abandoned that we see as eye scars on Rothman's neck near the, you know, the police are blowing up bombs and we see abandoned boats.
You're right.
I'm just saying, like, what's the detail? I'm just curious because I've been in other waterfaring communities where there are very strict rules and where owners are held accountable. And I'm really curious about the details of that movement and of that letter. Are they specific enough? Do they address the issues where we see, you know, boats tied to moorings that are going underwater and stuff like that? Anyway, that's my only
you raised some good concerns, and Alex, I'll ping you before we send it out to make sure that the letter reflects some of your concerns as well. I think that the main thing right now is to bring it to the attention of the state. As everyone knows, the Coast Guard only intervenes when it's in a navigable channel of water. Otherwise, they don't intervene. So, and then the city only intervenes when it crashes. So we're in this weird, different area that's kind of a tug of war here. And again, the funding that the city provides for the boats is always few and far between, really.
I think we might be able to provide some funding to the city if we actually find those boat owners, because all of those boats are registered. And we see abandoned sailboat that was lodged 2 years ago in Rodman's Neck. And the sails were up. You know, they're flapping in the breeze, visible from the bridge. It's not a great reflection on the community. If we find them, you know, that we could generate dollars. We don't need to take taxpayer dollars to enforce this. We actually need to hold boat owners accountable. And anyway, that's my point. And I've seen it work in other waterfaring communities here in the U.S., here in Annapolis, here also overseas. That's how you have to deal with it. So that's my only issue. And John, great job tonight.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job.
No,
I
I'll
appreciate
touch base with you because you know, if you're knowledgeable, I definitely want to bounce ideas off each other. So thank you for that. I'm going to ask, does anyone have any other questions or concerns that we can get to now? Okay. Can I get a second on the motion to pass this? Anybody?
A second.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to do Andrea for that one because David, you did the first one. And all in favor, just aye. Any opposed? And I'm scrolling here. Okay. As no one is opposed, we're going to say it carried there. And then the last one, I'm going to turn it over to David. David, this is about the composting program. So hold on, let me take you off here and you can, you got it. Okay, go for it.
I got it. Yeah, so the CORE Act is something that was put on hold, you know, by the mayor, right? And one of the key elements to it is the composting part. And I think what we've all found out in this, you know, in what has happened with the pandemic and everything else, how we're all in this together, and what the things that we do as individuals really matters to everybody else as well, right? And that goes to, we look, and you know, right outside our windows, we can see the big landfill, right? So I think that when what the mayor wants to do now is to kind of cut the program, and I think that's like the first the reaction at when things on are get a little tough. We want to cut things, and I think these are certain projects that we should not cut, right? I think if anything, we should increase what we put towards them, right? And that is part of this composting part, right? Because we are in this time where the climate change is happening, and the things that we do really make a difference in that, right? So if we can limit the amount of refuge that we are putting out into the environment, would really go a long way, right? So again, we could look down the road, we could see the big landfill. If we can start doing, our part in not, putting all that stuff out there, I think would be a good thing. I think that we should, I sent John a letter, and I think he could pass that, through the group, and to kind of sign on, and just to make sure that the mayor and the electeds don't stop this program. That's it, John.
Thank you, David. Yes, Jeff, come in.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like earlier in the call, we talked about cutting NYPD budgets. And so exactly where that budget, let's say that budget were to get cut, we could see money back into the system for these composting projects. And I echo David's sentiment. I fear that project with composting getting cut and not coming back. And it was really gaining some steam as far as environmental justice within the community and within the city. And people were just starting to figure out how to use it.
Right.
And
right.
Sanitation was just starting to figure out how to use it.
Right.
And we have the bins, right? That part's finished. And so I think we really, really need to push to get that program back moving. In other boroughs, there's huge sentiment to get the composting program moving again.
Yeah.
So I'd really like to see that happen.
I've been in other boroughs where people are so involved with it, where they actually bring that compost to certain areas. They don't even have the luxury of having the brown bins outside their door.
Yeah.
Right? They literally are, really involved in that.
Okay, so Jeff, what I'm going to do is say that you seconded that motion. How about that? Is that fair? Okay. And I appreciate what you said, of course, as well. Is everyone in favor? Raise your hand. And I will go through here and just make sure, okay? Okay, we are good. Any objections? Abstentions? Okay, then that one passed as well. Old business, open forum. Does anyone have anything that they need addressed before the next meeting, which obviously will be a much more secure meeting than this one? Go ahead, Dr. Gannon.
Yeah, hi. So one of the issues is really getting to me. I mean, I've been leaving them alone, but under the circumstances, with the Department of Environmental Protection, we need their help so badly on City Island and beyond. And I'm being a good boy. I'm not bothering them. They've probably got a lot of more important things to do, but you know what? You can't just let it go. There's so much needs to be done right. It's getting worse every day.
So on your block, the issue that's had there on Miniford with the real bad pondage that's there, they have agreed already to come and visit the community. I'm going to touch base with you. That's just been put off because of coronavirus.
Yeah.
But that's one of the different initiatives that everyone's been working on that's unfortunately went on hold. But just with the minute that everything starts to reopen, that's kind of on the front burner on my list as well.
Okay. I mean, it's not just Miniford. I think it's throughout City Island. So I'm not being like, oh, my block is the worst. It's not at all.
No, there are other. It's not just your block. Not at all. I didn't mean it that way. It's several blocks that have it really bad. So you were not alone, sir.
All right.
Okay.
Does
anyone else have anything they want to share? Questions, concerns? This is the time.
I do.
Go ahead.
More of something I would like to see. Again, I am a resident of City Island, African American, been here for 7 years, and also on a lot of these Facebook groups. And I'm at the point where I am in need of some type of conversation or some type of forum to be had with President Staten. I don't know how you pronounce his name. Excuse me if I can't pronounce it properly, because I'm seeing a lot of, back and forth on Facebook, and I never seen the man before. I don't have an opinion. I have opinion based off things I've seen as a Black woman on this island. And I think it's time that we need to have a forum where he steps up to the plate and answers some questions, because I have a couple, my doggone self. And it's just becoming a lot to see the hear the murmurings, to not get I don't have a full picture of what has been transpiring. I'm coming into it, just wanting to share my voice on these platforms. But I think this needs to happen. There's, and especially, I don't mean to be the person to talk for everyone in the Black community on City Island, but I know people who refuse to join these Facebook groups because of the racism that they encounter on the island on Facebook and off Facebook. And I think it's just, I've had enough. I'm tired of seeing Facebook arguments. I'm tired of seeing people have conversations about Black people with Black people in the conversation. So I think it's time that we open up a forum for this president to come and speak to everyone in the community, with the people of color that are in this community, business owners that are within this community, to voice their opinions and actually ask what is the change that is going to happen. Because again, I have been called many a thing on this island, and I need to understand that, are we united, or are we not? Is it just because it's popular to do right now, or are we in this for the long haul? And that's a legitimate question. No shade to nobody, but this is, I don't turn this off. This is, this is how I live every day of my natural born life. Okay. So I just feel like it's time that we have some type of panel or discussion. It could be through Zoom or whatever the case may be, but it's just, enough is enough. I'm tired of Facebook at this point.
Sure. Ashlee, first, and I feel bad. I know that the Congresswoman acknowledged it earlier on when she spoke, but I want to thank you and Abby and Steve and Michael and everybody who was involved in the Black Lives Matter protest on Saturday. The videos on my Facebook page, if no one's seen it, it was really moving. And not just you, Ashlee, but others shared their first-person experiences. And these are recent experiences. And, the rest of us, it's on us. We have to wake up and be better allies, and we have to help nip this stuff in the bud sooner. So I think broadly, there needs to be a bigger discussion on race. And I'm happy to talk to you or anyone else offline about how to best set that up. I mean, look at this call tonight. I mean, look at the horrible thing the Congresswoman was called. So clearly, this is still an issue that we need to be addressing, and what can we do to make things better?
Right.
Yeah, so my thing is, how can we have him hold a forum? Because that's what I really want.
Yeah.
Is I want him to step to the
Yeah.
plate.
Well, let's organize the forum, and then we'll invite him. We'll invite everyone else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, well, we can do it. I have confidence.
Lines need to be drawn. That's it.
Yeah. No, it can't. It's on us. Yeah. Go ahead, David.
No, I said I'm done. That's it too. You're absolutely right. Lines got to be drawn, and we need to take a stand. Which side are we on? And I'm not going to sit around. I'm not going to wait any longer either. Right? And Ashlee is completely right.
Yeah, because I'm not going to keep going on Facebook groups trying to educate people. I'm not.
No, you can't.
No, you're paid to do one type of teaching, not to teach all
I'm
people how to.
No more. I'm about tired. And I'm also about tired of, and again, I'm coming into this not knowing a lot of information. I'm hearing things from the outside. And, I applaud you and Steve and Abby because you're taking a lot of heat.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think maybe because they're seeing 3 Caucasian men stand for it, I'm happy to throw my name in the ring as a Black woman that says, no, what you're saying is actually factual. I was called a nigger when I first moved out here on City Island. I got scoffed at when I wore a Black Lives Matter sign a week ago. So it's not you're looking at what the 3 people you see as opposed to what they're actually saying. And I'm really, really tired of, I'm really sick of it. And so this president who constantly wants to say, I'm biracial, I get it. Where were you? Where are you? Can I speak to you? Where's your phone number? Because I got some issues with the president.
Ashlee, no worries. We're all on your side. You're in the correct room right now, and they'll happily fill you in as to the precursor to all of that, because everything you say, everybody in this entire room agrees with. So no worries. We're on your team, I promise.
Yeah, and it's not that, because again, people take my voice and be like, oh, she mad. Again, I'm not mad. I'm not hostile. I'm very passionate about what I'm talking about. And it's just a matter of, sometimes I have to put a little oomph in my voice for people to hear me, people to actually listen to what I'm saying. Unfortunately, that's also being a woman. We can get into that conversation at any point in time as well. But you know what I mean? So I appreciate that.
Well, I think you're fantastic, so no worries.
And the only thing, just to tag on here, the only thing I would add is that your voice is not only welcome, I think it's like what the last week has shown us is that it's necessary too.
Needed, yeah.
You're the closest to the struggle, and when you speak, people stop and they should listen. And if they don't listen, then we're all behind you. So 100%, as what Dan and Steve said.
Right on.
There we go. Okay. Anyone else? This is open forum. So if anyone else has anything, this is the time. Anybody? Okay. You know what? That's good too. People can email and we can put stuff on the agenda for next time. I know we've had a long night and 2 different Zoom chats. So I appreciate everyone bearing with us, your patience, your kindness. And I'll see you all soon. And I know I speak for everyone when I say thank you.
This definitely had to be the most exciting meeting we've had. It was started, by the way.
You're probably right on that. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Wait.